This episode of The Life of Bryony is sponsored by Asda, celebrating 60 years of great family value. That's Asda price. Welcome to The Life of Bryony, the show where we talk honestly about the chaos of life and the strength it takes to keep on going through it. Today, we live in a world that has taught us to shrink, to stay quiet, to take up less space. But my guest today is Megan Jayne Crabbe, and she's going to teach you to do the opposite. She's a best-selling author and body acceptance advocate. You might know her from Instagram, where her posts about embracing recovery and radical joy have helped millions. Her new book, We Don't Make Ourselves Smaller Here, is going to teach you to stop apologising for who you are.
Our bodies are not trends. It doesn't matter what is in. We actually all deserve to just exist in whatever natural variation and diversity we exist in.
My chat with Megan Jayne Crabbe right after this. Megan Jayne Crabbe, welcome to The Life of Bryony. I'm so happy to have you here.
I'm so happy to be here.
This episode, I think, I just need to start with this for anyone tuning in. Like, be prepared to get out of your motherfucking comfort zone.
Ooh, okay, yes.
This episode.
We can go there.
Because talk about how to be not your best self, but your biggest self. And that is something that does not come easily to women or to people that identify as women.
Tell me about it.
And so much so that you have written an entire book about it.
I have, yes. We don't make ourselves smaller here.
The book is about, and you say becoming a little bigger, a little less apologetic, a little more fully ourselves. Now, Megan, some people may have started following you on Instagram originally as Bodyposipanda.
Yes.
And so you have a huge following for your body positivity activism and work. And I imagine, and I love following you, and I imagine that, like me, because I've got like 1/10 of your followers, you must get a lot of people saying to you, I wish I had your confidence. I wish I had your confidence. I wish I could be that carefree in my body.
100%.
You do so much brilliant, just like dancing freely.
Right back at you, babe, as do you. Well, I see you out here on these beaches.
I know, but I am but a mere peasant dancing in your shadow. Right, so talk to me about this book and why you wanted to do it.
Yes, okay, so my first book, it was called Body Positive Power. It was all about reclaiming the body, unlearning diet culture and fat phobia, and healing our body image. After I wrote that book, after you write one book, everyone says, what's the next? When's the next one coming? What's it going to be about? And for a long while, I didn't have anything else to say or give or offer. And then I lived a little bit and I realized that accepting and reclaiming my body was just the beginning. And that there were so many other areas of my life where I had lost parts of myself, where I had been convinced to shrink myself, been made to feel less than, that I needed to reclaim. And I literally drew this map, just this little doodle when I started with body. And then I went, okay, where else have I lost parts of myself? Relationships, heart. Also in my sex life, sexuality. Also in things like my identity and what I've been convinced my life should look like. And, all these little places that I jotted down. And I thought, I want to write about all of this. I want to explore all these ways that we as women are convinced to make ourselves small and just question, can we take something back of ourselves? Does this have to be the way that we see ourselves and the way that we operate in the world? And it's not a 1, 2, 3, you're fixed. You are your biggest self, congratulations. It genuinely is more of an invitation to just come with me. And I've written very honestly about my personal experience. Let's just come and have an explore and question these things, because that, I think, is the start of so much unlearning. Just questioning, why do we think this way? Why do we feel this way? Who's actually taught us this?
And just noticing how small we make our lives. And also, I think that, and like a lot of people probably, I remember someone describing Instagram, social media as like a lie factory. you know, because we don't see all of it. We just see the kind of highlight reel and the good bits, you know. So even when you're trying to be unfiltered and refusing to conform to all those beauty standards, even then one can look like someone really happy who's got their shit together, who never has a moment of self-doubt. And I don't know about you, but that's not true for me.
Oh, never. Absolutely never. No, that's not real life, because the way we feel about ourselves, you know, we're not just in a vacuum. This is not just all about our own heads. We exist within the culture around us. And every single day for our entire lives, we've been told in one way or another that we're not enough, or that we're too much, or that we need to change this or that. So obviously it's a constant work in progress.
But also what I really felt reading this book is that, you know, like so many people, you've had to go through some very dark experiences of having absolutely no confidence, no self-esteem, no sense of self really at all, in order to come full circle to this place of imperfection, you know, of acceptance, you know, I suppose. And the bit that really, you know, at some points I was reading the book and going, fuck, I forgot that was the way life was. In the 90s, in the noughties, you know, so many things we normalized about diet culture. I mean, we didn't call it diet culture, it was just culture, right? You know? But like you write about how even if there was to be a fat character in a movie, it had to be played by a thin actor or actress in a fat suit.
Yes.
Like Gwyneth Paltrow in Shallow Hal. Or was it Eddie?
Fat Monica on Friends.
Yeah, it was
Eddie Murphy. Yes,
it was like all kind of quite jokey, and you know, the worst thing to be when I was young was fat.
100%, 100%. And I think one thing that we are speaking about more online at the moment is just how bad and how normalized the kind of 90s, noughties diet culture was, and I think that was a time when online gossip sites and magazines were really at their peak. And what those places did was hyper-focus on the bodies and the food diaries and the weights of famous women. And we all got so incredibly obsessed. I know that I did. And everything that I was consuming, everything that I was watching showed me this one incredibly narrow version of beauty, which was thin, white, able-bodied, cisgender, straight, young. That was the beauty standard. And I genuinely believed for the majority of my young life that I had to become that. It wasn't even an option, right? And let's not forget, you know, I'm mixed race. I was chubby as a child. I was never going to turn into Rachel Green. But in my head, there was no other option for me. I had to, because those were the bodies that things happened to. You know, life happened to those thin and beautiful people who were the main characters, who were fashionable, who were loved and desired. So I really internalized that lack of representation as I must change myself because I am the problem.
You say in the book that you felt uncomfortable in your body. You started loathing your body from the age of 5.
Yeah.
And I thought, whoa. And then I thought, actually, it's probably quite similar for most of us.
It's the actual statistics are shocking. You know, it's I think 80% of 10-year-olds have been on a diet, and there are studies showing that even 3 to 4-year-old girls are starting to express preferences for thinness. This was really this was shown really clearly when Curvy Barbie came out. So a few years ago, obviously Mattel unveiled these new body types for Barbie, and one of them was curvy. And the studies that have been done since then have showed that young girls already have negative attitudes towards the curvy Barbie. They don't want to play with her. They will make fun of her when the adults leave the room. And these are, you know, 4, 5, 6-year-old girls. So our cultural fat phobia and obsession with thinness has gotten into their heads by that age. So much so that even, you know, a bit of diversity in a doll, it's not enough. It's not going to fix it. We need to overhaul the whole thing.
But also, you know, I was thinking about this. The problem is that it's so internalized and it's so deep within us that it can never change, because companies such as Mattel will put out the curvy Barbie and they'll say, well, no one's buying it. It's not my fault. It's not our fault. We tried to tick that box, but no one likes it.
Yes.
And without looking at, well, why don't they like it? Because Rome was not built in a day, and it won't be unbuilt in a day.
Absolutely.
And it takes a long time and a lot of inward work, as you say. And that's why I'm saying be prepared to get out of your comfort zone. Do you know what I mean? Because it's dismantling so many things that we've learned. But for you, Megan, and I think this is really poignant and important to talk about, if you don't mind, that, you know, you were hospitalised for an eating disorder at the age of 14.
Yeah.
Could you talk a bit about that?
Yeah, of course. So as you said, my body image issues started really young, 4 or 5 years old, first day of primary school, thinking there's something wrong with me because I look different. I latched onto dieting as a way to try and solve the problem I saw as my body. And I was consistently dieting by the time I was 10. That spiraled over the next few years and puberty and feeling like I didn't know what was going on in life, in the world. What was I meant to do and be? And it developed into anorexia nervosa. Now, obviously, anorexia is more than just an extreme diet, and there are lots of factors that go into eating disorders. But that's how mine went. I am very lucky to be sat here. I'm hugely lucky, and you know, I was hospitalized. I spent time in a psychiatric institution for young people, and without a doubt, recovery is the hardest thing I have ever done and probably will ever do. And the thing is, when you recover from a restrictive eating disorder where you've lost a lot of weight, the general consensus is, well, she's gained the weight back, so she's fine. She's A-okay. Let's send her off. And back then, that's definitely how little support I received at the time. It was like, okay, your weight restored, you're fine. And then you go back into the world where disordered eating is everywhere and is so normalized, and everyone's talking about calories, everyone's body shaming themselves, everyone's obsessed with how much they weigh in the morning. You know, it's a mind fuck. It's a real mind fuck to try and recover within such a diet culture obsessed society.
Well, also a society that doesn't want you to recover. I mean, I feel quite emotional just listening to you because, you know, it's really clear to me how, you know, young girls, we make them ill, you know, like society makes them ill. And, you know, there is no, it's just tragic. And it makes me really angry. It makes me really angry. Always, I think quite a lot of like the body acceptance work that I try and do is in like direct response to seeing how my mother and her friends grow up talking about their bodies and how much they just hated themselves and how much it was like self-loathing was the starting point. It wasn't even, you know, it was just like accepted. And if you were nice to yourself, it was like, oh, a bit big for their boots. Right. A bit full of themselves.
Yeah. Or it's a joke.
Yeah.
You know, the kind of confident, sassy character.
Yeah.
Maybe plus size character is always just comedic. Like, haha, how could she really like herself?
Yeah. And I feel also for me, like, and this is a really interesting thing that I've only recently really kind of got to grips with, that for me, in a way, putting on weight in my 30s was almost like, it was like protection after decades of actually what I realized. And that comes through in your book so much of like the way I sexualized myself, and I kind of colluded in the way that society, you know, you write with such candidness about experiences you had with boys and men in your youth, where it was like the lines of consent were really blurred, but it was also that kind of thing of you had to kind of, well, I need to go along with this because if I don't, you know, my reputation is on the line, you know, and then I think that almost for me, and I don't know if this chimes with you at all, but like letting go of that. When I was like, I cannot be defined by my body, even though technically, you know, when you're running around letting your stuff like wobble around, you're being defined by your body, but it's kind of saying I'm more than my body.
Yes.
You know, like I am a body, but I'm a human, and all humans are equal.
Yeah.
You know?
I hear you, because I I guess, had similar criticisms leveled at me in that argument of, well, if you want us to be seen as more than bodies, why are you showing your body? Why are you, out here prancing around in your bikini? And I think inescapably, we still exist in bodies, and we still exist in a society that puts all the emphasis on bodies. So removing focus entirely from bodies, that's down the line, right? Right now, we have to work on shifting the narrative around bodies. That's like step one. You're talking about step 1000. Unfortunately, we don't exist as like floating vapor yet, where we can just like not focus at all on how we look. Yeah. So we're getting there. And for now, we're still gonna have to show up in our bodies, and we can make points in them, and we can change the narrative by doing things in our bodies that maybe aren't expected of us, like running marathons in our pants.
Yeah. I wrote this down because I thought it was it's a really brilliant phrase, and it's what I try to strive for every day when I wake up. Just listening to you talk about how recovery from an eating disorder is the hardest thing you've ever done, and that you continue to have to do on a daily basis, because that is recovery, right? But for me, it's like you talk about this, a weight neutral approach to health.
Yes.
And when people say, I wish I had your confidence, I think that's what they're going at.
Neutrality.
I wish that when I woke up, my whole day was not based on like my mood for the day, or my approach to life wasn't hooked to some numbers on a scale or on a label in my dress. Don't you think?
Absolutely. Or on how many likes a post gets, or on how attractive a man finds you when you step outside. It's all of these external measurements of our worth, a lot of which come from our body. We've been taught to see, in our bodies. None of them do us justice, and all of them undermine our ability to see ourselves fully and in our full worth, because we have always been infinitely more than any one measure, that any one, number, measure of our worth. And I think we've been tricked. We have massively been tricked into putting all of our value into these things that have never mattered that much.
How do we start dismantling all of these things? I want to start with dismantling the prissy tax.
Right. Yeah.
Can we get that? Can we do that? Can we do that in 20 minutes? Can we just talk to me about the prissy tax?
Okay. So I wrote a chapter in this book called The Prissy Tax, and I explored how for like my early teenage years, I would not leave the house, would not even open the front door, even for the postman, would not open the front door unless I was fully done and completely made up, etc. And it was a ridiculous expectation for me to put on myself, every day of school, every time I went anywhere, because I genuinely believed that if I was going to be seen out in the world, I had to be as close to the beauty standard as I possibly physically could. Otherwise, I'm not worth being seen. I tried to start dismantling that when I found body positivity. So I chopped off my hair. I had this long hair that I would always spend ages styling. I chopped off my hair. I stopped wearing makeup completely. And I challenged myself to go out into the world. And rather than having that constant loop in my brain of how does everyone see me? Like, when you look at me, how attractive do you think I am? Am I aesthetically pleasing enough for you? I challenged myself to look out at the world and think, well, how do I feel? What am I seeing? And I think as women, we are so trained to self-objectify that we don't get to be present in the world. We are just things for other people's viewing pleasure. And we spend our whole lives like, oh, how do I look to them? Shall I angle myself? Shall I suck in? Like, constantly. And it's exhausting, and it steals our ability to even be here in our lives, which is ridiculous because, hello, we exist. We are here. Therefore, we deserve to be here and to be taking things in and to actually, be engaging in what's going on around us. So I challenged myself during that time to really really unlearn that by exposure therapy. Really, that's what it was.
Okay, so so this is I mean, and actually, you know what? This is, you know, in a way, it is all sorts of like, it is a mental health issue. So it requires mental health tactics.
Yes, and also I think it's important to point out that I kind of went that extreme way. For me, it felt extreme at the time. Let's not get it twisted. I was still, you know, a young woman with a relative amount of pretty privilege. So to other people, it wouldn't have been like, oh, shocking, there's a woman going outside without makeup. To me, at the time, it was massive. And my relationship with things like style and makeup has evolved since then. And I'm at a place with it now where truly I do not feel that I need it. Some days it still feels like a bit of armor. Like coming here today, we're recording something, we're being on camera. I'm getting into my, you know, mindset of being on, and sharp little flick of eyeliner. Some days feels like it kind of helps. But don't get me wrong, I would absolutely rock up here with nothing in my PJs as well. And that would be absolutely fine because I don't attach my worth to any of this. It's sometimes an outlet, it's sometimes a bit meditative, and sometimes it's just a bit of armor that we still need. And I think it's worth saying that for a lot of us, for a lot of women, we want to reject these things. We want to stop dieting, stop wearing makeup, not care about what we're wearing or what we're looking like. And we have to also recognize that we are still existing in this culture that hyperfocuses on our appearance, that teaches us to care so much about these things every day. And we have to offer ourselves a little bit of grace. Yeah. It does not have to be this absolutely all or nothing, you know, if you're not doing it completely, you're a failure. And, you know, the same can be said for feminism in general.
Well, we do, I mean, like, this is another, you talk about good personhood, which I think is such a brilliant chapter about that thing of the standards we hold ourselves together. You know, and social media has absolutely made that, you know, it's a huge thing and we can fall into it. But yes, and that's what I actually wanted to talk to you about, that bit of the pretty tax, how you've dismantled it and kind of put it back together as it suits you.
Yes.
And that's the thing that I've also had to go through, where it's like, where I can find myself swinging from one extreme to the other, which is like, I'm not going to diet. It's like but there are times when it might be useful for my health to, I don't know, to adopt some healthy practices for my heart or something. Do you know what I mean? And it's not, these are not absolutes. And it's really important. And it's like, I think for me, the thing that I question about it is like, is this coming from a place of nourishment or punishment?
Yes, it's intentions.
Yeah.
It's intentions, and it's recognizing where the urge stems from. I think with so many conversations about, you know, makeup or body hair or, you know, what we eat, there's this immediate comeback of, well, I'm doing it for me. I'm doing it for myself. You know, it's not about anything else. And I think we probably need to be a bit more honest with ourselves, because realistically, if we had never been taught to wear makeup, to shave, to pursue thinness, none of us would be out here like this, right? And that's okay. That doesn't make you a bad human. It doesn't even necessarily make you a bad feminist if you still, you know, feel those pressures and are still participating in those things. But is there a little bit of room for just questioning? Is there a little bit of room for just being aware of that?
Why does this work for you?
Exactly. Why are you more comfortable doing these things? Would you really be doing them if you lived on a desert island and there was no one around, then there was no social media, and you didn't even have a mirror, you know? If we were genuinely out here seeing ourselves as more than bodies all the time completely. And I don't want anyone to feel bad about that. I mean, like I said, I'm still, you know, dipping my toe here and there in ways that I find less restrictive or okay for me. But I think, we could be a bit more honest about what's really going on.
This is a paid advertisement from Asda. Confession time. I've never been what you'd call a natural in the kitchen. Cooking has always felt a bit overwhelming, especially on those busy, slightly chaotic weeknights. But thanks to Joe Wicks and Asda, I've gone from what's for dinner panic to serving up something genuinely tasty in next to no time. Joe and Asda have teamed up to create quick, budget-friendly family recipes that make life so much easier. We're talking sizzled beef fajita pasta, sweet chili chicken stir fry, and cheesy peasy fish cakes. Dishes packed with flavour that your family will love. It's no fuss, no faff, and definitely no what's for dinner debates around the kitchen table. Honestly, it's made even me feel like a kitchen hero, even if all I did was follow Joe's simple steps. Just search Joe Wicks meal picks at asda.com and take your pick. That's Asda price. Now, let's talk about body hair.
Yeah.
Because I love the conversation about body hair is so fascinating, because it is like, I've always had this saying, Megan, which is love me, love my bush. I'm viscerally appalled. If a man said, please can you remove all your hair down there, I'd be like, please can you remove yourself from my life?
Absolutely.
Like, I just went on holiday. I didn't do my bikini line before, and there was a bit where I was like, oh, it's a bush, you know, it's like it's a forest. It's the Amazon.
Love.
Do you know what I mean? And maybe it but why does it require a bit of deforesting? Like, why are you looking down there anyway? Do you know what I mean? But you talk a lot about, and your relationship with body hair is it's sort of emblematic of the whole relationship you've gone on with your body itself, if that makes sense.
I would say so. So, I mean, I, like all women and girls in our culture, was taught that, I noticed there's a bottle of Pepto-Bismol there.
Yeah, everyone knows.
Very random. Okay. Like all women and girls, I was taught that, you know, body hair is disgusting and unhygienic and unfeminine and unacceptable, and you must shave it. And I was ready. You know, I have these memories of being in primary school and looking down at my legs in the summer and being like, is it time? Is the hair going to come? And, you know, going and stealing my dad's razor, as we all do, for that first time, and all that skin and blood.
I had a friend who shaved her arms. She was 10.
Yeah.
Why are you shaving your arms?
Yeah. I used to shave my mustache area.
I still kind of do sometimes.
Well, this was because a boy told me to when I was 10. I was like, internalize that. And yeah, I carried this through my life. And even once I had gone into body positivity and rejected diet culture and accepted my kind of natural size, I still could not accept my body hair. It felt like this line that I didn't dare cross. And a lot of that was about desirability. You know, I was dating men at the time, and the strongest opinions that I have ever heard about body hair have come from men and from patriarchal beauty standards. So I didn't want to cross that line of becoming that fat, hairy, undesirable woman. That to me was a horrifying concept. And it got to a certain point where I think it was over lockdown, actually, where, you know, I hadn't been as vigilant with my shaving because we weren't fucking going anywhere. And I realized that I myself did not want to reach for that razor and take off all my body hair. This was before I was about to kind of be reunited with my male partner of the time. And I was like, who am I still doing this for, genuinely? And if you look into the genuine reasons why women feel the way they do about their body hair, it's very similar to why we feel the way we do about thinness, because there are huge amounts of money and massive industries that have successfully brainwashed us into thinking that we must be hairless in order to be beautiful and worthy and good enough. That is the reason why we get rid of our body hair. Gillette.
I love that quote that you've put. I haven't written down who the quote is from, but I think I'm just going to credit it to you. If women woke up and decided to like their bodies, think of how many businesses would go out, you know, how many companies would go out of business.
Dr. Gail Dines, not me, a woman far more experienced than me.
I'm glad that you were able to attribute that quote correctly, but it's true. And, you know, again, it's coming to that thing of like, what are the bits that I like because they make me feel nice? Like, I've definitely come to that place where, like, I fucking love skincare. I love it because I love it, and I shouldn't, you know. And again, actually, I'm thinking about this. Like, I don't need to justify it, but I'm talking. You know, like, I love that sense that I am going to bed at night, and I am, you know, I'm looking after myself. Because let me tell you, Megan, there were times when I did not look after myself when I was going to bed at night. I didn't even know where I was going to bed at night, kind of thing. Yeah. And so for me, it's that kind of thing. And I like a bit of makeup, do you know what I mean? And I like a bright lip and all of the stuff. So it's not going, oh, the whole of the beauty industry is evil and wants, you know, and wants to suck us dry. It's sort of like, you know, it's accepting that there are bits that I, you know, like, you know, taking the bits that work for you and leaving the rest.
Yes. What do you feel able to challenge slightly? I think if we all did just a bit of that, we would massively shift the conversation. And it's that idea of, you know, within activism, people often say it doesn't take one perfect person, it takes hundreds of imperfect people. And I think these conversations, you know, about dismantling patriarchal standards of all kinds is the same. It takes all of us doing it imperfectly, but doing it.
Doing it.
Yeah.
So the other bits, kind of move on a bit because I've got so many things I need to talk to you about. Oh, it's started to, sorry. It was recording. It was dictating what I was saying. Right. Okay. So let's get on to relationships.
Okay.
Relationships with men specifically. There's a bit where it landed so deeply, so fucking deeply for me, where you talk about, I can't remember what it was in relation to, but you talk about a man like going cold on you, someone you've been dating, like not replying to your messages and going cold and disappearing. And you talk about how you began excavating yourself, checking for flaws and what you could do to make yourself better.
Yes.
Like, what have I done wrong?
Yes.
What have I done wrong to make this person disappear? And that I was like, oh my God, that is so, I find that so deeply relatable most of my 20s. But also not just in terms of relationships, but, you know, in terms of, you know, any kind of relationship, be it working or friendship, do you know what I mean? Like, and you alluded to this earlier, you didn't allude to it, you said it. That thing of going in, like how we are as women, taught to go inwards and excavate our own inward life, because that's where the problem lies.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. And I think when it comes to dating and relationships for women, we have been taught to see dating as an exercise in securing another person's validation and affection and locking it down, making them like us. Therefore, we mold ourselves, we make ourselves, you know, changeable to whatever they might want, to do whatever we can to be appealing enough to them, forgetting what we think about them or how we actually feel or if we're showing up as ourselves. And then when things happen, like we get rejected or we get ghosted, which is what I referenced in the book, we are left trying to figure out what we didn't get right. What did we not perform well enough? Where were we imperfect? Because it didn't go how it was meant to go. And especially for something like ghosting, where you don't get the explanation.
It's horrible.
It's so natural and easy to turn inwards and make yourself the problem. And that, you know, that goes for anything in life that goes wrong. For a lot of us, our natural instinct is to gain a sense of control, actually, by thinking, well, if I'm the problem, then I can fix it. You know, if it's out of your control, then, you know, there's nothing you can do. And that's quite a scary thing for some people. But if you're the problem, you can, get right in there, figure out all the ways that you're not good enough and you're unlovable and you're ugly and unattractive. And that's the reason.
Did you know it's an evolutionary, it's actually an evolutionary process.
Go on.
So I interviewed Gabor Mate. I don't know if he's amazing. Like,
casual, yeah.
And he was saying how that thing to turn inwards, I mean, it's specifically, it's much more hardwired in women than it is in men, but it's actually in kind of all of us, in that when we're babies, when we're newborn, and if we cry and our carers don't come to us, and there could be a million reasons they don't come to us. They could be on the loo. They could be, you know, like they could be talking to another member of the tribe or whatever. You know, like this is from, you know, if they thought that human was not coming, they would be terrified. They would be utterly terrified. They'd think. So babies turn in on themselves to go, well, it must be my fault. It can't be my carer's fault. My carer can't be they can't have disappeared. Do you know what I mean? They will be somewhere around here. And the reason they're not coming is because I've done something wrong.
Right.
So it's a sort of evolutionary, it's a weird protective thing that works when you're 5 days old,
Right.
but not when you're 45.
Interestingly, it's also quite a prevalent risk factor for developing an eating disorder. So young people who have gone through some kind of mental health issue or problem in their life, if they are not then supported by the people around them and they've had to turn inwards, figure it out themselves, that can then lead to the coping mechanism behaviors of the eating disorder.
It's amazing, isn't it?
Yeah.
How so many mental illnesses are actually evolutionary responses to just not being cared for in the way that you're supposed to be.
Lack of community, yeah.
Yeah. It's absolutely mind-blowing. I want to go back to relationships, and because the other thing, so excavating yourself, but also, so all of this kind of, I suppose it's what we'd call like heteronormative kind of conditioning that, you know, the prince will come and save me, you know, and I will live happily ever after. And that notion of needing to be saved by a man.
Yes.
And then you talk about how when you were younger, going out socializing was a chance to be chosen. Like some of your friends were like, oh, this is a nice time. We can go out and have fun. And you were like, nope, this is a chance to find my prince.
Yes.
I was like, yes, you know, and you know, that really, I mean, it's almost embarrassing now to think about the amount of time, you know, that I spent obsessing about this. And my life genuinely, I mean, I'm older than you, Megan. You're what, 30? 32. I'm going to be 45 soon. So, you know, like it was even what, I mean, it wasn't, you know what I mean? But it was like the conditioning, you know, like the Bridget Jonesification of being single. You know, I was like, oh, I'm an old washed up woman at like 21 because I didn't have a boyfriend.
Oh, bless.
Do you know what I mean? And it's like, what the fuck? I need to be chosen. Save me, save me. Ooh, what a surprise it was when I got married, had a baby, got a bugaboo, got a flat in Clapham, and I was still an alcoholic.
Oh, yes.
It didn't make me better.
And that's the shocking thing, isn't it?
What's that about, Megan?
What is that about? I mean, I feel like you've kind of you've unpacked it already yourself.
I'm really fascinated in it because I you know, because obviously, and to like tell everyone your story for you. So you're now in a relationship with a woman,
correct?
And you were, you know, and you were. What I loved is how careful you were about quote unquote coming out. It wasn't because you were like, well, I'm still me. Like I haven't changed as a person.
Yeah, it was a kind of a slow, quiet coming out, which is absolutely valid. You know, I think there can often feel like there's a bit of an expectation to make this big rainbow splash, and you don't have to. If that suits you, then great. But for me, I spent the majority of my life believing that I was straight and very much invested in the Prince Charming, in the heteronormative narrative of life. And, you know, everything will be great and I'll be saved once I find a man and get married and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So for me, the prospect of being queer, it just was not an option. I was
a bit like not looking like Rachel Green.
Yes. Absolutely that.
You had to look like Rachel Green and there had to be
and
a
be
Ross.
straight, 100%.
Yeah.
Even though, you know, as a teenager, I kissed women on nights out. I had sex with women and I was still like, I'm 100% straight, completely straight, not at all queer. And I think I had to do a whole lot of divesting from all the patriarchal narratives in order to even entertain the possibility that I could be with a woman and that could be my version of a successful life. And I didn't have to have a man in order to be saved or valid, you know, to have that relationship. And yeah, it was a slow dawning within myself and a lot of unlearning, and then just giving myself permission to explore a little bit, because as someone with a kind of public platform, you know, I've been sharing my life online for 10 years and I share a lot. And this, I realized, was something that I needed to give myself permission to gently explore myself before I kind of stepped up and said, this is what I am, this is who I am with or want to be with, or, you know, because there is that pressure sometimes to kind of
Define yourself.
Define yourself and be the voice of anything that you are part of. You know what I mean?
And certainly now in social media, you have to become then the spokeswoman for women who have decided later on in life, not even that later on, but you know.
Yeah. And don't get me wrong, I am happy and like glad that I get to share, and it's absolutely a privilege to be able to share these things and not, you know, fear for my safety, like queer people in so many parts of the world have to. But I will do it on my own terms, and I will do it in a way that doesn't necessarily have to be, you know, clickbaity or sensationalized, because ultimately at the end of the day, I'm still me, and I just happen to fall in love with a woman, and it's actually not that interesting or that big of a deal. It shouldn't be that big of a deal.
Well, no, it isn't, is it? But that's interesting, isn't it? Because it's all those internalized misogyny, internalized homophobia. You know, people don't talk about that. You know, and actually most people, as we know, are on a spectrum. Do you know what I mean? And the notion of straight and gay is all a bit bonkers, really.
Agreed.
Because everyone, I mean, producer Jonathan over there might Clay, he might be like, there's no way I'm going near a member of the opposite sex.
Things about it.
But, you know, like, and it is, and those labels we put on ourselves are, and you talk about this in identity, you know, in one way they can be very powerful, but in other ways they can be incredibly restrictive.
Yeah, massively limiting sometimes. It's wild because, you know, we have more labels for ourselves and for people than we've ever had before. And on the one hand, great, you maybe could find community there or clarity about who you are. But then also there's this thing called label fatigue.
I love it.
Yes. So Hinge, every year, I'm working with them at the moment, and every year they do like a study on their queer daters and how they feel about certain things. And this year, loads of people came back and said that they have label fatigue. They are sick and tired of having to fit themselves into these very limited boxes, or saying, my type is only this, I want to date just this. And actually what people are really wanting is a bit more freedom of exploration, a bit more openness, and the acceptance that it's all quite fluid and it can all be quite changing, and there's nothing wrong with that. And we don't have to fight so hard to like keep everyone in these little boxes.
And what works for you at one stage of life might not work for you at another.
Absolutely.
But it's things like the idea of one relationship for life is nuts, isn't it? I mean, that sounds, my husband's listening, and he isn't. I can tell you he's not listening. I'm obviously, except for he's probably like, no, it is nuts, the idea of one relationship. But no, but it's that, you know, it's, again, marriage is all tied down to the times when a woman, you know, there'd be alimony and the was it, you know, arms, or I don't know what, I'm not. The dowry, thank you. Marriage was a dowry, you know, where it was a business transaction.
Yeah, wild.
Okay, so now we're on to the subject of sexuality. I want to talk about sex.
Yes.
Okay.
Let's.
And specifically, I want to talk about the importance of wanking.
My favourite. Let's get into it.
Because
you should have a sex toy or like a little dildo or something on this shelf, you know?
We should, shouldn't we?
Definitely.
We're going to get, why not? I mean, maybe one of these are sex toys. They're just very well, it's just very well.
Yes, true. As Jamila Jamil says, anything's a dildo if you try hard enough, you know?
But the importance of wanking, we don't talk about this enough. It's so, I mean, you talk about it a lot in your book. Sexual shame keeps us small as women.
100%. Like,
it really does. And it's quite exhausting. And like, I'm always like, oh, I remember I wrote a book for teenage girls, right? And it was about all the things I wish someone had told me about at 12, which I only really learned when I went to rehab, right? And one of them was that I shouldn't be ashamed of wanking. I remember discovering wanking when I was like, you know, a young teenager, and just being like, oh my God, I cannot believe that I can produce this feeling in myself, you know. But it being like very embarrassing, very shameful.
Secretive.
And you talk about not really knowing you could do it.
Yes.
You know.
Yes.
Until later.
Yes, I was a little bit later to the wanking game. And I
get you so
well, I think having grown up with such body image issues and then going through an eating disorder, you know, in a lot of ways, a restrictive eating disorder like anorexia is like an attempted separation from your body.
Yeah.
It's like, let me feel nothing. Let me get so far away from my body. So reclaiming my sexuality as I came kind of back to life was a gradual process. And there were a hell of a lot of barriers there. You know, I've had so much shame throughout my life towards my body in how it looks, how it functions, what it feels, how I feel emotionally. And that sexual shame was no different. And, you know, I adopted that and I absorbed that from the same way we all do, from growing up in all these double standards. You know, we grow up and teenage boys are quite comfortable talking about wanking. There's entire films about it. And but for girls, it's, we don't do that. We don't talk about that. We don't explore that. That's not okay. That's taboo. Even now, there's huge percentages of women who still feel like masturbation is a taboo topic, which is wild because, babe, it's your body. You are in ownership of absolutely all of this. And the fact that we have been convinced to separate ourselves from something as innate as the pleasure that our bodies can produce for us, that's brainwashing. That is very, very clever brainwashing.
Well, but so for, you know, I've been thinking about this a lot recently. For like a long time, the pleasure I derived from sex was not my pleasure. It was the pleasure I could give someone else.
Yes.
That is brainwashing.
Yes, I felt exactly the same way. For me, you know, for a long time, sex was a performance and it was about the gratification of the other person. It did not matter whether I was having a good time, whether I was comfortable, whether I felt like I could be vocal. None of it mattered as long as essentially he had an orgasm and I looked pretty and that was that. And again, it's that disembodiment and that self-objectification where you're not allowing yourself to be a full human being who has needs and wants and desires. And I think masturbation is an accessible first step for a lot of people to reclaiming their sexual selves. Yeah, that's it.
But I think actually I would go further than that and saying it's an accessible first step to reclaiming themselves. Because you say in the book, and I was thinking about this, about like, if you want to be confident in your body in public, you got to spend time with it in private.
Right.
You can't jump from one, you can't frog jump over one of them. Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
Like, and I think that, you know, and so that doesn't have to be masturbating. It could be, and you say this, it's like just being naked, being naked in your bedroom and not like covering up or holding your boobs or, do you know what I mean? Like, I think that's a really important thing. Like, know your body.
Yeah.
Because it's like, it's really useful.
Yeah, 100%. And it is yours. And, you know, all these little ways that we've been taught that our bodies don't really belong to us can start with something, like you said, as simple as being naked with yourself. And also challenging yourself. So, you know, if you're walking around naked at home and you pass by a mirror, challenge yourself to not zoom in on all the things that we've been conditioned to see as flaws. Do not make a mental list of got to fix this, got to fix it. You know, notice when that conditioned negative self-talk pops up and just try to redirect it. Try to build some new pathways in your brain because it is practice. You know, I did not flip a switch and become Bodyposipanda, the most, you know, body confident person on the internet. I challenged myself to wear shorts in my home and not be disgusted with myself. And it kind of grew from there.
Yeah. Do you remember, I was just remembering, I was just suddenly as you were talking about that, I was remembering, do you remember that Little Mix video we did?
Yes, that was a great day.
Strip. Was it Strip?
The Strip. It was fantastic. I completely forgot that. We were literally in a music video together.
I know. And a Little Mix music video at that.
Wild.
What? Like, yeah. And
that was such a good time. That, I feel like to me, that was like the peak moment, not that video, but, you know, culturally we were at like a peak body positive moment where everything felt so hopeful.
It totally did. And it was like, oh wow, like the biggest girl band again. Like I was like, what the fuck? I'm like 39. Why do you want me in your music video? And it felt really hopeful. And I feel really sad that it feels a bit like it's gone, not a bit, it feels like it's gone backwards.
Massively.
You know, and it's and I think people are really tempted. They want to go, oh, it's Ozempic, it's that, and it's like, no, all it is it's diet culture and how entrenched it is. I mean, Ozempic is just
I mean, I think it's partly Ozempic.
Yeah,
you know, I think the GLP-1 mania definitely plays a part in the where we're at right now and the thinners back in. But yeah, like, carry on what you
No,
saying.
because but it's only a symptom of diet culture, isn't
Right.
it? It's like the ultimate diet.
Right, because the want to be thin never went away.
Yeah, so that's what it all is work. It's just it's no different from like the cabbage soup diet, the Atkins. It's just a much more effective version.
Yeah, it's the latest iteration.
It's the first diet that works without having to, like, I guess, like, to just it's the latest iteration. So it's just an incredibly effective way of people being able to do it without, I guess, the suffering of, the kind of the want because they're not hungry.
Yeah, and we've seen this over the last nearly 150 years that the diet industry has existed. It will always adapt and it will always morph and it will go away. It will rebrand itself and it will come back. 10 years ago, it was, we're not dieting, we're doing a lifestyle change.
Yeah.
And that was the narrative. And then we had,
Wellness.
wellness culture and it's always shifting. And unfortunately, I think the only way to resist it is to tap out completely and decide once and for all, our bodies are not trends. It doesn't matter what is in or what we're being sold. We actually all deserve to just exist in whatever natural variation and diversity we exist in. And we're not buying into it.
Here is the thing and I think it's a really important thing for us to end on, because I think this is in the conditioning of a lot of women, right? And it's what stops us from going to a place of love for ourselves. You write about the need to stop punishing yourself and how so many of us think that if we start being nice to ourselves, then we'll never reach our goals or get better as a person.
Yes.
I've certainly fallen for that trap. And still have to fight it every day, Be tough on yourself. Come on, Bryony. You need to get better. You need to get better. There's another thing that you need to achieve. You need to improve. Let's talk about that, because it's almost like a patriarch. It's the voice of the patriarchy keeping us from living our lives.
Yeah. Yes. Sometimes it's the patriarchy. I mean, sometimes it can come from so many places. And, I have done 10 years of therapy to try and unpack where my self-punishing voice comes from. And I've noticed that, in all of these things that I've put myself through, whether it's hating my body and restricting food, or being overproductive to the point of burnout, or, just being cruel to myself every day, it's the idea that I am deserving of punishment just because I exist and because I don't match up to some idea of perfection as a human that isn't real, that doesn't exist. And, in recent years, I've done it around my moral goodness, how good of a person I am, or am I being enough of an activist? Am I, changing the world enough? And it's always these, I guess, impossible expectations that obviously are impossible. I was never going to look like a photoshopped magazine cover. I'm never going to be the greatest activist in the world. I am just a regular, imperfect human. And I think for a lot of us, holding these expectations over our head that ultimately we know deep down are not achievable, we will never achieve, it's a really convenient way to constantly be horrible to ourselves.
And to keep ourselves small.
Absolutely.
And do you know what, Megan? We don't make ourselves smaller here.
We don't. We don't make ourselves smaller here, Bryony. Correct.
Megan Jayne Crabbe, thank you so much for coming on The Life of Bryony. A huge thank you to Megan. What a brilliant reminder that we are never too much, guys. Her new book, We Don't Make Ourselves Smaller Here, is out this week. What I took from this is that boundaries are an act of love, and showing up as your whole self is never something to apologise for. If this conversation helped you or made you feel seen, please share it with someone who might need it. Be kind to yourself, and I'll see you next time.